So excretion can be defined as the body getting rid of waste products that it produced itself. Now this can take place through quite a few organs. We've got more than one excretory organ in the body. One of these excretory organs are the lungs. Now the lungs secrete CO2 and then less important products like water and heat. Now we learned about the lungs in grade 10 already. During cellular respiration, the cells make CO2 and water as waste products in the production of heat and energy for us, and we breathe out that CO2. The next excretory organ we have is the skin, and mostly the product that is given off is water in the form of sweat, and it also contains things like salt, urea, and some heat. Then we also learned about the colon in grade 10. The colon is the last part of the large intestine, and when the body breaks down hemoglobin in the liver, the result is what we call bile pigments. When you eat a fatty diet, excess of cholesterol is digested and broken into a waste product that is also digested by the colon. And then obviously some bacteria and mucus is also excreted through the colon. So the last excretory organ that we're looking at is the kidneys, and we will actually be doing the kidneys in a great amount of detail. But the kidneys are mostly responsible of getting rid of amino acids, urea, uric acid, creatinine, and a lot of other waste products that is potentially very harmful to your body. But the easiest way to learn this information is to actually go to page 114 in your textbook and just learn the summary that we did of this content in Learning Activity 1, Question 1. Okay, so let's start looking at the structure of the urinary system, in other words, the excretory system through the kidneys in more detail. So if you have a look at your textbook, you'll see this picture, and during lockdown you were instructed to color code all the tubes or blood vessels in different colors. Now, as soon as you get a picture like this and you color code things, it kind of stands out. So shading or coloring things when you do a test or in an exam always help you make sense of the picture better. So you were instructed to color each kidney. You'll see there's a blood vessel that brings blood into the kidneys, and those are called the renal arteries. So from the aorta, the big blood vessel in the middle, you have two branches. You were supposed to shade them in red. So you've got a renal artery on the left and a renal artery on the right, which carries oxygenated blood with a lot of waste products into the kidney. You will also then notice that the renal vein are two veins that exit the kidneys, and you were asked to shade those in blue. Now the renal vein carries purified blood towards the inferior vena cava. So a vein carries deoxygenated blood as well. So the blood that goes into the kidneys are full of oxygen. The blood that comes out of the kidneys are clean but deoxygenated. You actually had to make a summary in the form of a table to show these differences in the blood composition within the renal vein versus the renal artery. Please know this well for the assessments coming up. So the renal artery, in summary again, has oxygenated blood, so lots of oxygen, little CO2, but it still has a high concentration of waste products like urea. But the blood that exits the kidney in the renal vein has little oxygen, lots of CO2, but then again, little bit of waste products left over. So when we actually dissect a kidney, or we open it up and we look at the inside, it doesn't really look exactly like the picture we have in a textbook. In your textbook, I asked you to highlight the 3 regions or areas that is visible inside the kidney. The very, very inside that I shaded yellow here is called the renal pelvis. On the very outside, the layer is called the renal cortex. I made that brown. The whole area in between the brown and the yellow is called the medulla in pink. If we look at a dissected kidney, you can actually see this clearly. Have a look on the outside. This layer is called the cortex. The middle area is the medulla, and then the light area in the middle, on the inside, is called the pelvis. If we zoom in to the medullar area, in other words the pink area, we'll see these triangular structures called pyramids. Now, pyramid opens into a calyx, which looks like a tube that goes into the pelvis. The pyramid contains structures called nephrons. A nephron is the functional unit or the smallest part within the pyramid, within the kidney, that makes urine. So let's look at urine formation. So as I said before, a nephron is found inside the pyramid of the medulla, or in the medulla. And if we look at one nephron, this is what it looks like. Which means if we have the Bowman's capsule there, and we've got our first little convoluted tubule, the proximal convoluted tubule, then we have the loop of Henle. Woohoo, check my artwork. Then the distal convoluted tubule, joining to this big fat collecting duct. If we look at that, we said that blood comes into the glomerulus and then leaves. Remember, we did that. And we said that where blood comes in, the blood vessel is wider, so that's called our afferent arteriole. When the blood leaves, it's called the efferent arteriole. All right, but what we didn't say beforehand is that in the bloodstream, in the plasma, we actually find useful things, okay, and harmful things. Sorry, I see the video is going a bit crazy. Now, let me put it this way. Let's say the useful things, I'm going to give a key. All right, let's say it's a smiley. There's a smiley face. That's the useful stuff. We need useful stuff, okay? So the Bowman's capsule bringing blood in, we know that inside the bloodstream we have useful stuff. So I'm going to put a few smileys in there. There's a smiley, there's a smiley, there's a smiley. So useful substances are found in the bloodstream. But harmful substances, let me make a cross for that one. That's also found in the blood, in the plasma. Now we want to get rid of the blood, the harmful parts. So in this blood, let me put 2 or 3 crosses as well. So these are the harmful things. We don't like that. We want to get rid of that. And as the filtrate moves, as the blood passes through here and filtration happens, the fluid that forms on this side that gets filtered, we called that filtrate. Okay, so the liquid that kind of starts dripping out here in the green is actually called filtrate. It used to be the blood plasma, which means, sadly, that when this filtration happens, is as the plasma moves through, you're going to have the bad stuff move with it, which is great. We want to lose the bad stuff. As the bad stuff continues moving, you will actually eventually urinate it out because it's urine. Okay, we want to get rid of it. It's on its way to becoming urine and we're going to pips it out. But sadly, in the plasma, we also have some of these smileys, the good stuff. They also get filtered out. Now, that's not good news because we don't want to lose any of the good stuff. So you'll notice there were smileys, good stuff, substances in the bloodstream, and some of the useful stuff or the good stuff that we want to keep includes glucose. So now you suddenly have the plasma dripping down the proximal convoluted tubule, and it actually contains harmful stuff, which we want to get rid of, but it also contains useful stuff like glucose and water that we don't want to get rid of. So what happens is that we actually see that this efferent arteriole is going to continue. Okay, but what it does okay, is that it branches off like this, okay, and it goes twisting and turning around the tubes like this. It goes windy, 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 all the way like that, and joins up there again. So some blood is actually going to travel around the tube. So it's going to go around the proximal convoluted tube and around the loop of Henle. So there's a lot of blood vessels winding around this tube. And it's in this twisty blood vessel going around the tubes that the second stage called tubular reabsorption takes place. So that is when some of these useful things, all right, the smileys, as it travels down, if we happen to see, oops, there's a glucose molecule, there's a smiley. We don't want to get rid of the smiley. We don't want to get rid of the glucose. So that glucose molecule is going to move from the filtrate in the tube back into the blood vessel. So the smiley is going to go back into the blood. So by the time the filtrate reaches the collecting duct, you will see that there's only crosses in. There's only harmful stuff, no good stuff. So that process of the useful thing is getting reabsorbed from the filtrate back into the bloodstream is the second stage, which we call reabsorption. And since it takes place in the renal tubule, which is this loop and wobbly, this tube, it's called tubular reabsorption. The third stage, called tubular excretion, happens over here. All right. In the last bit of the renal tubule called the distal convoluted tubule. Remember, it's convoluted and it is at a distance from the starting point. So we say it's the distal convoluted tubule. Now, by the time the filtrate gets here, it basically only has harmful stuff in. Except if we look at the bloodstream now, initially we had filtration, but sadly the holes and the pores and the filtration slits that causes filtration here are very small, and we actually do find some harmful substances that are quite big. Oops. So if I had to draw these, okay, all right, these crosses, these X's represent harmful substances as well, but they are quite big. In other words, that cross, for example, is much bigger than that one. So this harmful substance was too big to be filtered out here with the other little harmful substances. So the big ones, as they pass along this tube or blood vessel, it'll also do this, and by the time it gets here, you might actually see, oops, there's a harmful substance still left in the bloodstream. It kind of snuck through this filtering system. It never got filtered out because it was too big. But by the time the blood passes this last section, okay, of the tube called the distal convoluted tube, these molecules or these waste products that was too big to be filtered out there will actively be pushed into the filtrate so your body can get rid of it with the urine. Now, the filtration was passive. You didn't need energy. It just happened. Reabsorption of stuff is mostly passive. You don't need energy for it. But this sounds like work. So taking waste products and pushing them or moving them, sometimes against a concentration gradient, into this tube requires energy. So that waste product being actively pushed into the filtrate in the tube would take place through a process called tubular secretion. Now, tubular again, because it's part of the tube, and secretion, and remember that it's active, okay, because you need energy. So obviously you need to know exactly what gets filtrated where and what gets absorbed where. All right, so if you look at this summary, you can see in the blue glomerular filtration take place right at the glomerulus at the start of the nephron. Tubular reabsorption is shown here in the red and tubular secretion in the orange. The filtrate actually contains useful things as well. So you can see here that the useful things like glucose, all vitamin C and all amino acids, and then some salts and other vitamins get reabsorbed in stage 2 in the proximal convoluted tubule. But 65% of the water gets reabsorbed depending on the needs of the body, which would be controlled by the hormone ADH. ADH controls the permeability of the tubules in the kidney, which means ADH actually controls how much urine you make by reabsorbing more or less water. So the substances like hydrogen ions, potassium ions, ammonium, creatinine, and certain drugs get actively added in this last part of the nephron during tubular secretion. This means by the time the filtrate actually reaches the collecting duct, it is now called urine. And it basically consists of 99% water and then all the waste products that the body wants to get rid of. The urine will pass through the pelvis all the way into the bladder through the ureter and be stored there until you urinate it out through the urethra.